No, this is still recording. Okay.
So the concept of Malchus Dein Seif is like the Rizal says, Ki'ilu Noima. Why does he say Ki'ilu Noima? That's a Bechina Taktoina. Because you can't really say in unlimitedness Madrigas, but you can in the sense that you can talk about the intensity of the Peshitas. And that's a very difficult concept which we won't go into at the moment. Barichas. Suffice it to say that Malchus Dein Seif means a certain gradation within the Ein Seif, which is Bezer Ribui Madrigas, in order that the Koach HaGvul should be able to affect and be poil on the infinite light. And not just be once again absorbed inside the infinite light, like the Koach HaGvul is prior to its Galus Alidei the Tzimtzum. So that's Indian. So there's a Indian of Ein Seif. In came there's a Gilui which is purely Ein Seif, which is the Indian of Malchus Dein Seif. Now, the reason it's Malchus Dein Seif is for what we just pointed out. Of our purposes, it's the unlimited light prior to the Indian of the Tzimtzum. So in Kem we got two Inyanim. We got the Kav, what Inyana is Gvul, our oil which has become completely limited, and we have an oil which is unlimited, even though it's called Malchus. Of a Begolu, it's absolutely unlimited. So now, to make things even more complicated, the Rebbe says, "Va'kav gamkein," the kav shoyresh hamshachosei milifnei atzimtzum. I'm sorry, the shoyresh hamshachosei milifnei atzimtzum. That the kav also is shoyresh, comes from that oil of Malchus Dein Seif, also prior to the tzimtzum. Because like we saw, the kav is linked and touches that madrega. V'hu mi'ein ha'ma'or, and it is similar to the ma'or. Now, here we meet up with another phrase, which is very, very common in Chassidus, and it's a lashon of the Alter Rebbe. It's well known. It is a famous idea which will later, towards the end of this Maimah, be made clearer why the Alter Rebbe used that expression. The Alter Rebbe said that the oil which shines from the Atzmas, particularly the oil, how it is at the beginning, the oil Ein Seif, right, we just point the unlimited light, well, that's what we call Mi'ein HaMa'or. And B'chlal, oil, compared to Keli, is what we call Mi'ein HaMa'or. Now, you might have seen in some of the Sidurim and in some of the other such not necessarily the Chabad Sidurim, that they have Zmiros on Shabbos. Yeah. The famous old Shiloh one above, they don't sing Zmiros. So the truth of the matter is that it appears that even by our Rebbeim, there were maybe times when they did actually sing some of the Zmiros. But they're not meant to. El Torah doesn't bring them in the Siddur. And so there's one of the Zmiros which says that Me'ein Olam Habo Yom Shabbos Menucha, that compared to or similar to the Indian of Olam Habo is the rest and the Menucha of the day of Shabbos. That's it, a famous song. You ever heard it? You ever sang it? By these Balbar that you may have visited outside the Gvulim of Chabad. It's Me'ein Olam Habo Yom Shabbos Menucha. So was it a taich? It doesn't say that similar to the Gilui Olam Haba is Shabbos, but it says Mi'ein. Now the expression Mi'ein means that it partakes in itself of the emesa etem of the thing to which it's being compared. When I say that one thing is similar to another, then I don't necessarily mean that it has in itself the etzem of the other madrega. I just mean that they have a certain connection or similarity, a basis of comparison. Or when I say me'ein, then I mean that there's some trace or aspect of the very essence of that thing which is found in the thing which I'm comparing it to. which means that ultimately I have to say that if something is me'ain, something else, it's really a min gilui of the etum of that madrega. So therefore the Alter Rebbe achieves a most amazing idea, and he says that all of the inyanim from the Atzmas all the way down to the whole side of Ishtaushelus, everything begins with the concept of Iyar. Later on, other inyanim come in. But everything is the concept of light, Iyar. So the Alter Rebbe says that the milah of that concept of light is that on the one hand, it has nothing whatsoever to do with the source from whence it comes, in the sense that it's absolutely of no effect on the thing that comes from. It doesn't in any way bother the thing that comes from. The thing is not busy to produce it. It's completely and utterly of no error, legabi the thing it comes from. For example, if you take the fluorescent light, the light going off from the etzem light itself doesn't affect the fluorescent one way or the other. It doesn't matter to anybody if it's may, if it's not may. And the same with a candle or any source of light. The actual light itself is of no reference whatsoever, and of no nagia or no nafkamina legabi the thing that's giving it all. However, there's another amazing contrasting concept the other way, is that the light is really, says the Alter Rebbe, me'ain hamoer, that there's certain essential traits of the source of the light which come over in the light. In other words, that the light is kilu, burning both things, it dances on both, as you might say, chasanas. The mitzad echad, it's of absolutely no significance to the ma'or, yet on the other hand, it has in itself essential characteristics of the ma'or. In other words, that fluorescent light is a thing which it's essentially a burning and illuminated thing. And so the light that goes off from it is also illuminates, it lights up. It carries the essential, even though it's a thing which shines at considerable distance and all over from the actual source, but it has in itself an essential characteristic which is an etzem characteristic of the thing from which it comes. Plus there are also other inyanim. I don't know, you have to maybe ask the scientists and the physicists what other things exist. And then there's the famous Einsteinian idea, from what I gather, is the light a series of particles, or is it one solid piece of revelation, etc., etc. But that's also to be found in Siddur. The interesting thing is, however, the light is what we call mi'ain hamor. It has in itself things which are atzmius how would you call it, characteristics of the ma'or from which it comes. Ma'or meaning the source of the light. Now let's be careful with those two phrases. Iyar is the light, the actual luminescence. Ma'or is the thing which gives off the light. In other words, the luminary from which the Iyar shines. The Iyar, says the Alter Rebbe, is absolutely no reference whatsoever to the luminary, and yet contrastingly to that, and oddly enough, completely contrastingly to that, it has in itself certain essential traits which reveal themselves, which are etzem dika traits, like the luminary. And therefore that's what we say, Iyar is me'ain hamoyer. Now with that the Alter Rebbe gets out of all sorts of amazing inyanim, and with that he explains all sorts of tremendous concepts, some of which we'll see as we go along in this mind. So it comes along the Rebbe now, and he says, and this is going to create us a difficulty, and we're going to have to deal with that as we go along, that the kav is what he calls me'ain hamoyer. The kav is light. So since the kav is light, then it must be like the light, the original light which shines from the Atzmas. It's also mi'ain hamor. In other words, despite the fact that the kav becomes gvul, and despite the fact that it becomes the union of limitation b'etzem, but since it comes from the Iyar shelifnei tzimtzum, and it's light, then light is mi'ain hamor, meaning that the kav is mi'ain the light which was there before the tzimtzum. It's essentially a gilui of that light which was there Lifnei HaTzimtzum, and just like the light shel Lifnei HaTzimtzum is Me'ein HaMoyer, so same as the Kav also. Me'ein HaMoyer. In other words, it's Me'ein, the light Lifnei HaTzimtzum, and through that, it's also Me'ein, the very Etzem of the Atzma. Idachim Kain, says the Rebbe. We find then that in the Kav we're already seeing these two contrasting nuances. On the one hand, the Kav is only limitation, it's only oil which has already come into Gvul. On the other hand, it's B'pnimius, or B'toich, what it really is, it's Me'ein HaMoyer. So that he throws in here, almost like you might say for good measure, because it sort of somewhat puzzles the reader when you read that little phrase, because we're going with the fact that the Kav is all tzimtzum and limitation. So the Rebbe said, the Rebbe, Lagabi b'china zu, Lagabi the inyan of the Kav, how he is a inyan of limitation and gvul, Chochma da'atzilos u'b'chinas adameh le'elyon. He said, Lagabi the Kav, the inyan of Chochma da'atzilos is Gilui ha'helem. I know just a series of gradated madrigas, which can be compared one to the other, and therefore we say Adameh le'elyon. But Ulagabi hamshocha sheb'chinas ein tzei. In other words, the Iyar how it is prior to the Tzimtzum, and the Iyar aposhut how it's beyond the whole inyan of the Kav. Lagabi that, the inyan of Chochma da'atzilos is a Chochma mi'ayin. In other words, it's inyan for yesh mi'ayin. In other words, here we have the two things. We have the inyan from Gilui Helem and yesh mi'ayin. So the Alter Rebbe says that Atzilus is both of them. It's Adameh le'elyon Gilui Helem, and it's also yesh mi'ayin. How can you do that? It can't be both. Yesh mi'ayin and Gilui Helem are hafochim and opposites there me there. So the Rebbe, it depends what you're talking about. If you take Atzilus, Lagabi Ak, and Lagabi even Klolos HaKav, despite the fact that that's tantalizing, that the Kav has in itself a inyan which is Me'ein HaMoyer, with that we're going to have to settle with it as we go along. Over Begoy, the Kav is a limited entity, and therefore we can say that Atzilus being a whole series of limited entities, are those limited entities, Lagabi the inyan of the Kav is Gilui Helem, and therefore it's called Adameh le'elyon. Ve'ilu Lagabi the Iyar is prior to the Tzimtzum. The Iyar how it's still completely unlimited, even though it's Malchus David. Over B'poyo it's unlimited. Begiluye Lagabi the Kav, which is the absolute opposite end of the stick, the inyan for limitation. Lagabi that, and the Chanami. Atzilus is yesh mi'ayin. I feel the Madrega Aki Rishayna, the highest level in Atzilus is Ein Chanami, it's yesh mi'ayin. So that's like the how do you call it, the picture that we're trying to put on the map that we have here. Olam Atzilus, Lagabi the Kav, and Lagabi the whole inyan of Iyar Gvuli, and the whole what you might call resultation of the inyan Atzimtzum, which to produce Iyar, which is already limited in very etzem mahusay. Lagabi that it's Gilui Helem, it's just a series of derivations further downwards, but the details are already there. Like we said, in Ak, all the details are really hidden, and even in the Kav, because the Kav is already a limited light. Ve'ilu Lagabi the Iyar shelamaylo mi'hakav, lamaylo mi'atzimtzum, Iyar sheb'chinas ein tzei, then Atzilus is yesh mi'ayin. In other words, that it's just a madrega which has no kesher galui. It's a inyan from ein roich and can't be compared in a form of Adameh le'elyon. All right, so that's so far. Now we go a bit further. Omnom adayin, says the Rebbe, tzodik li'ovin, we still have to understand that me'achar she'achochma legabi hakav hu b'bchinas Adameh le'elyon. Since the inyan of Chochma compared to the Kav is a inyan from Adameh le'elyon, in other words, hainu b'bchinas Atzilus. When we say Chochma, we mean the general concept of Olam Atzilus, because Chochma is the beginning of Olam Atzilus, and we've already said Shehu b'chinas Gilui HaHelem. Here we're saying that the inyan of Olam Atzilus, Lagabi the Kav, is the inyan of Gilui HaHelem. והקו הוא מפני עצמוס עיר אמצעי שלפני הצמצום, שהאור הוא מעין המוער. אם כן, הרי הוא גם כן בחינת גילוי ההלם. Now we have to understand what is the Rebbe asking here. The Rebbe said, we've just said that Chochma legabi dekav is gilui helem, and meaning clothes atzilas. Chochma meaning atzilas. Yeah, legabi dekav is gilui helem. But we didn't say that the kav legabi itshor was gilui helem. We didn't really say what is it legabi itshor. We just said it's a gilui gvul from the bligvul. We haven't really said legabi what. So the Rebbe said, if we're going to say that the inyan of the kav is its shores is really in that we pointed out in the ain't social now, and we said that the is mi'ain hamoya, that light is just like the etzem himself, where it's completely and utterly unlimited. As in Cain, if the kav comes from that madrega, then the kav has in itself also this inyan that it's mi'ain hamoya. As in Cain, harihu gam Cain b'chinas gilui hahelem. In Cain, there seems to be something in the kav that even though he's become a limited entity of a legabe, the shores from whence he comes, we're saying that he has in himself this concept that he's me'ain hamoya. Now, why is he me'ain hamoya? Because he's oyer, the kav. As if he has in himself an inyan that he's really me'ain hamoya, then he's also gilui hahelem, but in a slightly different way. He's gilui hahelem in the sense that he's gilui inside the inyan of the kav, what you might call inside the inyan of limitation. He's a gilui of the shelifnei atzimtzum, and l'chora that would be gilui hahelem. That was on a high madrega. Now it's over here in the kav, because both of them are oyer. And you say that the kav is me'ain hamoya, and the kav himself has in himself an inyan for gilui hahelem. I'm sorry, adequate. There's also the inyan for gilui hahelem. But if he's gilui hahelem, then that's going to blow us like how we come in yonim. If the kav himself is gilui hahelem, that's another nusach in gilui hahelem. It's another concept. He's going to be, even though he's already become limited already, he's going to be gilui hahelem like how we the ain't safe shelifnei atzimtzum. So then you're going to run into a problem. How come that you say that the certain madregas like Avi the Erslov now Timzum Yesh Mi'ayin, and there are certain of them are Agilui Hahelem. If the kav himself being already limited, but compared to his shores which he comes from mitzad his pneumias, which is oyer, he's also Agilui Hahelem, then you blow the whole concept. Even though he's become gvul, he's also gilui hahelem. And the implication that we have now is that a gvul, a gabi that oil, which is bli gvul, is an inifa yesh mi ayin and ein haroy. So that's basically the question that we're now, and like we said, the kav is going to be a contrast again, what's the word, a paradox. It's going to be like a sort of a paradox. Because on the one hand it's become gvul, and yet on the other hand it's gotten itself this inyan of oyer me'ain hamoya, and all these things that are connected and make it a gilui of that oyer shlipnei atzimtzum. How are you going to settle with that? How are you going to have on the one hand that atzilus is adamele elyein legabi zeh, because it's limited, and yet on the other hand you're saying that really it's gilui of the oyer shlipnei atzimtzum. It's another type of gilui hahelem, but that will interfere and blow all of your concept that you've had up to now. And therefore, the ultimate question is going to be: is why do you say that one lot is yesh mi'ayin and one lot is gilui hahelem? Just say that they're all gilui hahelem, or that they're all yesh mi'ayin. In other words, why do you say one is bli gvul and the other one is gvul? If everything comes from the kav, and the kav pnim yusei is that he's sharp to the bli gvul, and he's just a gilui of the bli gvul, also in a form of gilui hahelem, because you just said that he's me'ain hamoya, just like that is me'ain hamoya. And why do you say one is yesh mi'ayin and one is gilui hahelem, and why do you say all these differences? They can all be considered the same thing, because ultimately, they all come from the kav. He's the first revelation after the tzimtzum. And that's what we're going to That's the problem that we're going to run into temporarily. But fortunately, it'll right itself shortly after we get into the details of the question. V'hagam, said the Rebbe, you could say, well, maybe the kav isn't really Gilei Helim, because you will be able to say that it came through the Tzimtzum. But in some shach it was through the Tzimtzum. So maybe you'll say that since it came through the Tzimtzum, and the Tzimtzum blew the concept of Me'ein Amoya and took away the real similarity of the Kav L'Gabi D'Ein Tzeit, because it came through the Tzimtzum. I mean, that's the first thing you would answer. The kasha seems to be almost like a confusion, because you'll say immediately, well, wait a minute, we just said that the kav came through the tzimtzum, and the tzimtzum was the union of agbola, and limitation in the most ultimate sense. The kav ran into the tzimtzum, and then it became a union for absolute gvul, and therefore it's not really anymore, me'ena amor, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So the fact that the Rebbe asking the kasha that it is me'ena moya, he's avoiding that issue that we just said that the kav is really the koach hagvul because it came through the tzimtzum. So therefore the Rebbe said, I just said that the hamshacha the kav is elideh tzimtzum. This thing came, what am I bothered about? Why do I keep saying no? The kav is really me'ena moya, therefore he's going to blow all of my concepts. Why? Just say that the kav came through the tzimtzum. And since it came to the tzimtzum, it's already gvul, so everything's fixed up. It's gvul. The Ursha lift now, tzimtzum is bligvul. Elamai, we seem to be locked with this idea that the kav is somewhere or another, compared to the Ursha tzimtzum. So don't say that. Just say that it came through the tzimtzum. And that's the big paradox that we're going to meet up with all the way along. Miko Mochim said that. Why do I say that I'm making a whole kasha out of this, that the kav seems to be me'ein amoya, and therefore it tends to blow all of my concepts? He said, because even though it comes through the tzimtzum, harei mavua b'eit chayim, shezeu ma she'acha atzimtzum himshich min ha'oyer ein seif kav echad yosho min oyer ha'igul shaloi. והראש העליון של הקו נמשך מן האין סעיף עצמי ונוגע בו. So the Rebbe said the problem is created by the very essence of the Lashon of the Eitz Chaim itself. The Eitz Chaim says, the Rizal says that firstly had the Igul HaGodel, which was caused by the Tzimtzum, the Oyer Ein Seif withdrew, and then what happened? That there was Nimshach Kav. Now, where was the kav nimshach from? The kav was nimshach from the Oyer Ein Seif, which had just withdrawn, and the kav comes from it. So, what the result says is that it's nogeya rosh ha'elin, the highest point of the kav is nogeya and nimshach min Ein Seif atzmai v'nogeya boy, and it touches him. So that follows that even though you're saying the kav is the ultimate limitation, you're saying that it touches and it's linked and it's kilu coming directly from the Igul HaGodel. The Igul HaGodel is the Oyer Ein Seif Atzmai. So in the very lashon of the Eitz Chaim, you seem to be almost, as it were, producing yourself the kasha which we just are. That albeit you say it is in effect already become a dover hamugbal, but you say it's linked to the kav. It's linked to the Igul HaGodel and it's nogeya boy. And if it's linked to the Igul HaGodel and it touches it, then it must be partaking of it. So how can you have your cake and eat it too? On the one hand, it's partaking from the very essence of the Ein Seif. On the other hand, you're saying it's tachlis agvul. But you're saying yourself that it does actually in effect touch the Igul HaGodel. Im kein l'chor, it is a union from the Ein Amoyer, and it's probably a union from the Ein Seif. And how can you have both? So that's, he said, in the etzem lashon of the Eitz Chaim. Upafrat, and particularly, lefi ma shekosav v'mokim acher, da'ivin amshochas akav, hu she'acha atzimtzum v'yisau m'soyer, shezeh in richuk, nimshach achachak liyeh b'chinas kilo. So he said that it's mavur in other places, in Chassidus Chabad, that what happened here with the tzimtzum is like two opposite tnuis, two opposite movements altogether. That on the one hand, the Eibishter withdrew the Iyar Abligu, the Malchus Dainsay. He withdrew it altogether. Yeah? And left over what we call a vacuum, a mokum pot. He withdrew it completely. How did you get the Indian of the Kav? Oh, he came back again. In other words, the Eibishter first of all withdrew it, and then all of a sudden he came back into the picture with his light, and he gave us the Kav. Now, in other words, if I would have said that he took away the whole light and he gave us the Kav from somewhere else, he produced now a new concept called limited light. Okay, limited light, a whole new thing Hashem's brought into the scene, and it's sort of after the ego, but it's not necessarily connected with the ego. It's there, a limited thing now. How did I get there? Because I made a tzimtzum. A tzimtzum is gvul, tzimtzum the koach gvul. And I got this light, but he said, no, I don't say that. I say that it's nogeya in the Iyar Abligu and touches it. So therefore, he said, we have to say it here, there are like two opposite movements. The first of all, there was a complete withdrawal, and then there was a return that the light came back and shined again. And I think the light came back and shined again, and that's what gives me the Kav. It comes to say, what he really just took away, he's already coming back with it at the same time. So I asked myself to give only Shaila, if he took it away, now he's coming back with it, then we're back to where we started. We've got the all over again. Oh no, we haven't. We've got it in the form of a Kav. Okay, so it doesn't touch the legal. Oh yes, it does. So in case we're in a sort of a case where we're having our cake and eat it too, but we insist on the fact that the shortage of the Kav is the return, what you might call, the return of the Mohicans, or whatever you call them, that there was a complete withdrawal, now there's a return. It's all come back again. But the Eibishter brought it back into revelation.
You said to make the eagle, that Hashem removed himself, and then Hashem removed himself, right?
He didn't remove himself. He only removed the Iyar. Don't ever say he removed himself.
He removed the Iyar.
Because then you're getting into a very serious.
He made the Kav, right? He removed the Iyar.
Yeah.
And created the Kav. He created what?
Well, he didn't create the Kav, because that's if you say he created the Kav, then that's Mamishesh Mi'ayin, and that's what we want to avoid a little bit. What we're saying is that after he removed the Iyar, or from that same oil which he's now removed and taken away altogether, he brings back a gilu of it in the form of the Kav. You follow?
Yeah, but why couldn't he just make the Kav right then? Why do you have to take away the Iyar?
Oh, that's another shayla. Yeah. Oh, that's very good. That's a matter of fact, the Rabbeinu Chaim Vital himself asked that kasha in the Sefer Eitz Chaim. It's written that kasha. Why do we have to take everything away and then bring back the Kav? Why didn't we just make the Kav? It caused it tzimtzum and just leave the Kav. Why did you have to take everything away and then you have to bring back the Kav? That's a very good. It's like sometimes in Nigla, you're learning away a sugi in the Gemara, all of a sudden somebody packs a kasha from the mashur or something, just out of nowhere, all of a sudden a kasha was state, or from the Ritva, or from the Rashba, or from somebody, sudden a bomb of a kasha which is written, it's not stumbled up a question that he's asking, but it's a kasha which is actually written. So that kasha is a classical kasha because it's written in the Eitz Chaim itself. So the answer to that one is that I'll have to answer that another time. The reason is that Pashtas, that the tzimtzum has to be an absolute thing. It can't be a relative thing. If the tzimtzum would only be a relative thing, then we'd never really be able to get Gilui of the Kelim. What they're in ultimately is absolute gvul. They limit the light. We'd never will be able to get such a koyach, because we're always dealing with only relativity. We're only withdrawn relatively, and in the covers begilui that earth, because it's just like a form of a kvetch, like that earth. And therefore, we'd never really be able to get to a miti as his galasagul. That's what the Eitz Chaim answers. And therefore, we have to take everything away and we have to start all over again. So what the Rebbe is saying is, you took everything away and you're starting all over again. But if you're starting all over again, you're coming back with the light that you had before. As if you're coming back with the light that you had before. Then what's this whole idea of saying it becomes gvul? have to say that the BMS, that's a gilui the before. As you can't, how can you all of a sudden say that it's a inyan from Gvul B? It's a mamahos. You follow? It's like laughing at yourself. It's like being says to yourself, Menayu, obey. So that's what the Rebbe is now building, that whole shaila, that question asks itself, because I was now suggesting another question different than yours, not just fetch everything down just to the way it was to the cow, but first of all make your tzimtzum and then bring back something altogether different. Bring back what you might call a new type of hiskalus, which is purely a gvuli. You follow? Now, it's the very fact that I don't say that. The fact that I say that the gvuli is connected with the ego hagodel, then that means that there's an inyan of kiru from the abuti gvul into this gvul that we're talking about. As if that's the case, and the kav is biemus, the abuti gvul all over again. Then how come it's inyan from gvul? No, it's not this. Whatever the Rebbe says, there's put down in several places that that's in effect what happens, that the kav, its hamshocha is that the Eibishter comes back again with exactly the same light as he had before, and he's now made into gvul. And that's l'chora, terribly hard to say such a thing, because you said that he can't, in order for him to get to the kav, he had to make the tzimtzum. Not talking about the kelim now. In order to get to the kav, he had to talk about the tzimtzum. As you can't have two opposites, benoisa echa. So what we're going to say is that you can. That's going to be the ultimate test. Anyway, we see from that despite the union of the tzimtzum, which was a richuk, after that was nimshak liyeh b'chinas kiruv. After that, the came back in a state of nearness. The bligvul was re-miskarev to the whole situation. Fine, the b'shvil amshachas hakav. There was another movement altogether, an opposite movement, me'atzimtzum hakoido. That has been now a completely opposite movement from or compared to that tzimtzum which preceded it. Shehu inyan silika oya. The inyan that preceded it, the tzimtzum, was the taking away of the light. That afterwards there was a return. There was a new tenua, a new movement, not the movement of the tzimtzum, but a completely new one, a return of the light, that it came back and shined. And there was the Rebbe that after the siluk, the was chozer v'nimshach ha'er v'ainu bo'er it's probably, that base is a little bit confusing, and I saw in this new choveret that they've given out that they want to maybe remove that base. It's a little bit confusing. V'nimshach ha'er hainu ha'erein seishel ifnei ha'tzimtzum chozer v'hoyer. Take off the base there. That this ha'erein seif, how it was prior to the tzimtzum, returned and shined forth. In other words, that the kav is not a new thing. It's a return of the original light, and it shines, and now it's in the form of a kav. So how can that be if the original light shines and it becomes a kav? And what does it mean that there was first of all a tzimtzum, and then after the tzimtzum there came about the kav? How does that fit in? Was it a pshat that after a complete silicon, a complete dissolvement, there was now a giluf in the original oil, and yet it's another oil altogether. It's not the oil it was prior, but it's oil ha-gvuli. So those are the shailas that present themselves by inyan zeh, ad koi, and we're now going to see a wondrous moshel that the Rebbe brings, and this moshel occurs in Kama V'Kama Drushim, Kama Mamarim in Chassidus, the Ashpah of a Rav, how he gives over a seichel to his Talmud. Dainu, how he takes something that he understood, which is absolutely incomparably beyond what the Talmud can take, because the Talmud is not be'erah to the Rav, and how does he give over ultimately to the unexperienced Ein Aroi Talmud, that he should be able to be makabel, the seichel how it is, b'emes eitz Rav, and we're going to see that there's this inyan of tzimtzum that occurs, and then there's like a return of the original seichel of the Rav, in an albeit limited form, and that's going to be compared to this whole inyan of the Hediko at the Kav, and with the mit we'll understand at least the inyan of the Kav, but we're going to still end up with our original Shaila, and with that whole Moshe we're going to indicate what is in effect the Shaila. Just how pointed the question really is, that how can you have these two things which ultimately they contradict one the other in their Etzem Mahuz? How can you have them both functioning together? And why do you say that later on one is one, it's a limited thing, and the other is a inyan which is unlimited? Each one contains in itself the unlimited. Why is this one limited and why is that one unlimited? And we'll see about that Mi'at Hashem in coming and future shurim. Okay, we'll have Mark now in a few minutes.